3, 2, 1. Go ahead, please.
Welcome to the Board of Education special board meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. And so Ms. Yeager, Executive Director of Board Services, may I have a roll call, please.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Here.
Barbara Peterson,
Here.
Crystal Tapia Romero, Josefina Dominguez,
Here.
Peggy Mueller Aragon,
Here.
Courtney Jackson,
Here.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Here. Special Board of Education meetings will be hybrid meetings with community members having a choice to attend in person at the John Milne Community Boardroom or virtually at www.aps.edu. Presenters will attend virtually. You may participate by attending the meeting in person, watching the live stream of upcoming meetings by clicking on the live meeting stream button on the main board page at www.aps.edu, emailing input, comments, and questions to board members at boarded@aps.edu or calling 505-880-3729. So our first item for consideration and action is adoption of the July 6, 2022 Special Board of Education meeting agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. This is Barbara.
I'll second. This is Peggy.
Roll call, please, Ms. Yeager.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero, Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Peggy Mueller Aragon,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. So we're going to be moving on to our special issues in this particular agenda. And our next item for consideration and action is consideration for approval of negotiated changes regarding wage increases for members of the Albuquerque Teachers Federation, ATF, bargaining unit. This is a discussion action. Todd Torgerson, Chief of Human Resources and Legal Support Services, and Dr. Valerie Hoos, Executive Director of Labor Relations. You have the floor.
Good evening, President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, and Dr. Blakey. First, thank you so much for your convening this special board meeting. We appreciate it. For these three items tonight, we have before you, I'm here with Dr. Valerie Hoos, Executive Director of Labor Relations, and the district's Chief Negotiator. For the third item, I'm here with this Valerie Atencios. She's the Senior Director of Employee Benefits, Leaves, and Wellness. For the first two items on the agenda, APS will be asking for your review and approval of the tentatively agreed to wage increases for the Albuquerque Teachers Federation, ATF, and the Albuquerque Federation of Classified Personnel, AFCP, respectively. The chief negotiators for both groups are present with us this evening. For ATF, we have Dr. Ellen Bernstein, and for AFCP, we have Kathy Chavez, for whom I also wish to thank them for their hard work and ongoing efforts to maintain and sustain good faith bargaining efforts. For the third item on the agenda, we will be asking the board to approve staff's recommendation to adjust the benefit tier salary bands to keep most employees within the same tiers to ensure that with the state mandated raises and negotiated raises, the vast majority of our employees will continue to pay the same percentage share for their benefit premiums. So with all of that said, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Valerie Hoos. Valerie.
Thank you, Todd. Good evening, President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, and Dr. Blakey. Thank you again. It's nice to see you all, and we do appreciate your time this evening. We are here for consideration of approval for the negotiated changes regarding wage increases for members of the Albuquerque Teachers Federation. We meet with the Albuquerque Teachers Federation annually to negotiate the bargaining unit. The parties have reached a tentative agreement regarding wages and therefore request the Board of Education's approval of wage changes for the 2022-2023 school year. We are currently still in negotiations, and upon completion, look forward to presenting a full and complete package for your approval. As such, just yesterday, we reached a tentative agreement for wages for behavior management specialists and community school coordinators. I believe those documents were placed on your desk prior to this meeting. The behavior management specialists, or BMSs, were recently accreted into the bargaining unit over the spring semester, and this is their first salary matrix with ATF. They were previously on a district support schedule. You also have before you the tentative agreement for the community school coordinators, or CSCs. The previous matrix had some structural issues that could have resulted in pay disparity, either a decrease in pay or an inflated increase. And this is a simplified salary schedule based on their education level. As Todd mentioned, we are joined this evening by Dr. Ellen Bernstein, president of the Albuquerque Teachers Federation. And we now stand for questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the information. And what I'll just do is just open it up. Anyone have some questions or concerns with the proposed salary schedule for this section? Go ahead, Board Member Peterson.
Thank you for bringing this to us. It's exciting that this part of the negotiations is completed. I am curious if you can sort of summarize, because I know we were not sufficiently funded through the salary matrix that we got from the state. So is there anything you can tell us just about how we succeeded in supporting all employees as they should be?
Board Member Peterson, that's a great question, and that is a huge interest for both the district and if I speak for the union as well, that we really want to ensure that our employees are paid appropriately and compensated for the work that they do. We worked really hard this year to come up with some solutions to ensure that everyone is receiving appropriate compensation and an appropriate wage. This year, I think you'll see on the documents that you have in front of you that we successfully merged the salary matrices for the A schedule. So they used to have we used to have, gosh, at least, thank you, Ellen, at least 5 different salary matrices for the A schedule employees. And we were able to merge them to make that their pay more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Equitable?
Yes, thank you. Equitable across the board. Dr. Bernstein, do you want to provide some feedback or input for this?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you very much, President Montoya Cordova, Board Member Peterson, Dr. Blakey. We created some really elegant solutions to ongoing problems by merging our salary matrices. It's going to be a lot less confusing for the employees and the employer as they work to pay people. APS made a commitment to all of the support and related service employees who have chronically been underfunded in terms of mandatory raises. It's been a struggle for over 20 years to make sure that we don't have 2 classes of licensed employees in APS, 1 class of teachers who are guaranteed by state law their minimum increases in the tiers. And as those tiers have increased, the problem was leaving behind the essential people that work with kids every day, the counselors, the social workers, the therapists, many of whom are mandated through IDEA to provide services to our special education students, and all of whom provide for the social emotional well-being. As we know, it's very important that we address the whole child and not just one part of our students. And so the commitment of APS to ensure that they keep up with the teacher tiers in perpetuity made it possible for us to do a lot of things that we didn't have the flexibility to do before. That and the pretty substantial increase in funding for the teacher side made it so that we could take and smush together some of the schedules that had been separated. And I'm really pleased with the solutions we came up with. We've worked really hard. I want to let the whole board know, we've worked really hard with the finance department to make sure that we have taken into consideration every individual. No individual, regardless of what schedule they used to be paid on, will be allocated less than the law requires. And most of them will be able to see an increase greater than what was required by law.
Thank you for that. I mean, I hope that at some point soon, the state steps up and recognizes the work that they do. But I think we can be really proud that within APS, that's been addressed. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that was a big commitment, and we're committed to that. And certainly there's other benefits in terms of operational efficiencies with respect to the aligning of the matrices as well. And one of the things too, and Dr. Hoos had mentioned this in the introduction, this is one piece of a grand piece of documentation that we'll be bringing for you as part of the collectively bargained agreement. So we want to bring this piece forward so we can make sure that we're addressing this for all of our employees.
Thank you. Any other comments down on this side? On my right? Oh. Left?
You wanna go first?
Yes, Board Member Mueller-Aragon.
So I have a question about the salary addendums for the community school coordinators and the behavior management specialists. And so I'm just looking at the community school coordinators, and they just all do such a fabulous job. But I'm just looking at their salaries, and I'm looking at non-degree, and that's $48,500, and then going up to PhD, which is just a couple of $1,000s more. And they obviously accepted this. I just don't get it. So is there a reason that these salaries were accepted, or is it that maybe there are, and I don't know, maybe there are just not many community school coordinators that have those degrees, and that's why it was accepted?
That's a really great question, Board Member Mueller-Aragon. No, there are not a lot with PhDs or EdDs or JDs. And I, off the top of my head, I don't know that there are any in the position currently, but we did want to make sure that that was something that we had in place in the event that we do have a community school coordinator who comes to us with an advanced degree.
Okay. If you do have some, if you could just let us know how many there are, if there are any that are at those different levels. And then when it came to the behavior management specialists, they do a really important job for our kids. And so I'm looking, and it's like $25 an hour, which I know is a lot better than $15 an hour. I just am having such a hard time with these really, in my opinion, in these really important positions. And then I'm looking at $36,000 a year for, these people that are doing these, such great work for our kids that really need the help. So I know that's just, my little editorial. So I know there's probably not an answer. I just will hope that that will change somewhat in the future. So that I'll leave it at that. And then the next question I have is, I know on the second, I guess it's on the second page, on the tentative agreement on the second page, it has a list of all of the other personnel that are listed, and it goes, I think it's number 8, where it says that placement on the salary matrices will be based on the current language in Article 10. So, but then on the last paragraph, it says there's going to be adjustments in the language in Article 10. So approval to the adjustments in Article 10 will occur later, but placement on the matrices will be based on the current language. Can you just explain that to me a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I'm happy to do that, Board Member Mueller-Aragon. So Article 10 is a really big article, and it contains our reciprocity language in there too. So that's what this really speaks to is that reciprocity piece and some of the requirements that employees have for each particular role listed. So for example, counselors have a master's degree. So all of those components still fit in. We are, so that piece will still play the part.
And is it okay if I add a little
Please?
bit?
Yeah, of course.
So Board Member Mueller-Aragon, we have always had very generous reciprocity language for all the related and support employees in APS, because we want to honor their experience in the private sector and make sure that they get credit for that. It helps us to attract and to retain the employees in all those role groups when we acknowledge that they may have been a nurse in a hospital or a therapist in a hospital, you know, maybe a counselor in private practice. So as long as they had a credential to do the work that we're hiring them for, they're able to get all of their past experiences credited to them when they get hired. And we want to make sure that we maintain that practice as we dissolve the rest of the article.
Okay. That's somewhat helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. If you can just refresh my memory when we are looking at the CBA and just kind of go, these were kind of the changes, that would just be helpful to me. And then the last question I have on number 9, it says that movement through the matrices will be obviously based on licensure and 3 years of successful practice at each level. So is that totally just based on evaluation? Besides that, what else is it besides just the evaluation?
Board Member Mueller-Aragon. So it's based on the evaluation. It's based on their the requirements to move up into licensure within PED.
Right.
So in order to move from one level to the other, a teacher, a counselor, a social worker, they have to have at least 3 years at the previous level before they can move up.
Okay, so it's not complicated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Board Member Dominguez, do you have any questions?
I don't have questions, but I'm happy that this has finally happened. And happy I think it was Bob Dylan that said, once you survive, sometimes you have to surf through a decade, in this case, 2 decades to get to this point. But it's all great news. And my aspirational goal is that behavior management specialists will someday get double that amount. And as I have shared with Kathy Chavez, I think food service people, and which my mom was, should start at $25 an hour. But like I said, that's an aspirational goal, and I will be working to move us in that direction when we meet with legislators. So thank you. I'll do my part to help the negotiating team.
Thank you.
We appreciate your efforts there for sure.
All right, thank you. So I also don't have any comments. I'm pleased that it's been simplified. It's easy to see all of this together. So great work, and really happy also for our nurses, counselors, social workers, interpreters being put on that matrix. So I know that was a real intentional negotiation piece. And I just want to thank Dr. Bernstein for being really persistent on that and helping us to get that through. We wanted to get that negotiated. So I appreciate that that's there. So do I have a motion?
So moved. This is Barbara.
Seconded. This is Josefina.
All right, Ms. Yeager, may I have a roll call, please?
Daniel Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero, Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Peggy Mueller-Aragon,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. So our next item for consideration and action is consideration for approval of negotiated changes regarding wage increases for members of the Albuquerque Federation of Classified Personnel Bargaining Unit. This is also a discussion action, and we have same folks on the floor.
Go ahead, Dr. Hughes.
Thank you. We are here for consideration of approval of negotiated changes regarding wage increases for members of the Albuquerque Federation of Classified Personnel. We meet annually to negotiate the bargaining agreement. As such, the parties have reached a tentative agreement regarding wages and request the Board of Education's approval of wage changes for the 2022-2023 school year. As with ATF, once negotiations are completed, we look forward to bringing to you a full and complete package for your approval. I am here with Kathy Chavez, the president of the Albuquerque Federation of Classified Personnel. And at this time, we stand for your questions.
Thank you. Do I have any questions? Go ahead, board member.
Okay, so my question is, so the number one says a $2 per hour increase for all drivers after the state mandated 7% increase. So I guess my first question is why the additional $2 after the state mandated 7%? My second question is at the very bottom of that document on page 12 for us. It then says all employees will receive the 7% statutory increase or the new proposed starting rate, whatever is greater. So I'm sensing a discrepancy there because the first one is discussing only transportation, but then the second bullet is saying all employees will either get the 7% or they'll get the $2 plus the 7% plus $2. So what does who does the last sentence pertain to?
Where?
Is that everybody else except transportation? Or I guess I'm confused as to who both of those sentences pertain to.
That's a really great question, and I'm happy to elaborate on that. So let me start with a little background. So AFCP it's a pretty large group and made up of several different role groups. So it's comprised of all of the members of the transportation department, clerical staff, educational assistants, campus security assistants, and community support liaisons. Within that educational assistant role group, we also have health assistants. So it's a very broad range of different employee groups. And so I'll start with the bus drivers first. So we currently have 189 bus drivers in the district. And so that increase was that $2 increase per hour on top of the state mandated increase was really to recruit and retain our staff members. So there are a lot of other agencies or companies that are hiring individuals with their CDL and bus drivers and offering them a much higher rate of pay. And so this was our attempt to really bring in new bus drivers and to retain our current bus drivers. Kathy, did you want to add anything to that piece?
Madam Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Blakely, thank you for having us. Everything that Valerie has said to you is exactly on target. The thing of it is that this last year we were so short on bus drivers. Their routes were being doubled and tripled, and some kids were not even being picked up to be driven to school. This is a highly competitive arena, and we have too many outside influences such as Amazon, Rio Rancho. I mean, so many companies, the city of Albuquerque that pay so much higher. And this was a great way to be able to hopefully recruit and retain bus drivers and bus attendants for our kids in APS.
Thank you,
And-
Kathy. And you made reference to the very last sentence in the document. That applies to the remainder of the salary schedules.
Right. And if I may, to help clarify that confusion, we put in the words, all employees in the above listed salary schedules will receive. So to not confuse it with the subsection under transportation.
Okay, so you mean all of the employees in the above listed salary schedule, starting with J
Correct.
one. Okay, so they
Yep.
will either receive the 7.12 increase or
Correct.
7 plus the $2.
The $2 is specific to bus drivers.
Right.
I'm sorry, the APS proposed. Okay, I see.
But just to carve it out separately, to your point, that breaks up that confusion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that kind of clarifies things. And then I guess my only other question is on number 3, where it says standby activity drivers. They will be the only drivers allowed to drive activity buses. So does that mean that if we have any teachers who are licensed, who have their CDLs, they are now not allowed to drive the buses, because now only standby activity drivers will only be allowed to drive activity buses? Does that cut out any non-union licensed CDL teachers or administrators to be able to do that? Kathy's shaking her head no.
I agree.
No, any bus driver that's there that's qualified to do an activity bus and can maintain the hours on the standby, then they will be able to drive.
Correct.
Whether they're union or not, they'll all be able to drive.
I would agree. So for your example, they would be an activity driver and they would,
Right.
they have the CDL, they could do it. It doesn't
Yes.
preclude that.
Okay, so anybody who is considered an activity driver, union, non-union, so long as they are licensed, are able to drive.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to confirm that.
Yes, and just for clarification, so if they're an APS bus driver, but they're non-union and we have an activity route, anybody could pick up that route. That works
Yes,
for
ma'am.
transportation.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Blakely, yes. It doesn't matter if they're an employee of the bus transportation place, I call it the bus barn, they are all eligible to drive.
Okay, thank you. I was just confused because this is a union contract, so I just wanted to make sure that was still.
But we have to honor the contract for everyone, whether they're a member or not. And so that is never an issue.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just had a quick one on, can you just tell me on the coaches, and they have all their differentials, and the one who is receives the highest differential is the head football coach. And I love sports, not to play them because I don't do that, but I love kids to play, and I'll keep my opinions about football. My husband's a great Dallas Cowboy now. Everybody that hates the Dallas Cowboys will be like, oh. But why is it that coach is paid at the highest level? Is it dependent on the number of players, the number of games they play, the equipment, practice time? I just wonder why they get paid the most. And then I'm looking at, the head volleyball coach that, makes a couple $1,000s less. So just wondering.
Board Member Mueller-Aragon, the stipends here, the differentials here are the same as the differentials that are in the teacher's contract. And we wanted to extend the opportunity for EAs to serve as coaches as well. So we maintained the structure that was previously in place. With that said, and I think Dr. Bernstein will probably want to speak to this somewhat, we are continuously looking at our differential structure to evaluate how coaches, how orchestra directors, how drama coaches are compensated for the work that they do with students outside of the school day in these extracurricular activities. Dr. Bernstein?
Board President Montoya Cordova, Board Member Mueller Aragon. Several years ago, we got together, and Dr. Blakey was part of this work and can talk to it also. We created a task force to look at our differentials, which are outdated and have had they were created out of a tradition of what we valued at the time. And I think the value on football over co-curricular and extracurricular activities that are not necessarily sports related or football related is a legacy. And we looked at the whole system and used a weighting system based on how many kids the person working in these activities is in charge of, how long during the year that they work. We weighted it according to many factors, and we created jointly, APS and ATF, a really great differential plan that, because we have been funded for mandates from the legislature and not through the SEG, so that we could fund local priorities, we have not been able to enact that plan. Once we're able to enact that plan, I think we will right a lot of wrongs. One of those wrongs is that our sports coaches are really underpaid compared to the rest of the state. Another wrong is that we value the idea of sports, particularly boys' sports, over girls' sports and over activities that engage a lot of people in extracurricular activities like speech and debate or yearbook or choir or all those things where we attract the entire community into our schools to listen to the concerts from band and orchestra. And of course, the band director, is at every sporting event. And we really want to be able to have the flexibility with future funding to work on our differential schedule because it is unequal and out of date.
Well, thank you. I hope that that is something that will get worked on. All sports and all activities. I mean, I had a daughter who was, in choir and drama, and I was in speech and debate. And so those were things that were important, just as important as playing on the basketball team or on the football team, in my opinion. And boys and girls sports should be equally valued. So hopefully we'll work on it. And I mean, I understand that there are some, coaches that have, more players, and I'm thinking though about like the girls, the cheer. It's not just girls now, boys and girls. They're the cheer coach. Well, they work year round. They're at everything. The dance, the dance team as well. So when you're thinking about how much time they spend, like football just has a season and it's not a year round sport too. So I'm glad, and hopefully that, we'll be able to work on this and just make it a little bit, just look better and prioritize according to what we really value.
And to that end, there is a mutual interest between the district and the unions to make some of these adjustments and look to adjust this more equitably, and then also to compensate the folks for the time that they're putting in. Because this, as you can see, their sacrifice is out of love and not out of compensation.
Oh, absolutely. Right. I can see that.
Right. Board Member Dominguez, look like you.
I just want to make sure I heard correctly, because I think there was a call to action. the SCG, is that what we're hoping that we get funded through the SCG to make all this more equitable? Is that correct? And that means a call to action to us. Thank you.
Board Member Peterson?
I have to say, I'm not as happy to move for approval of this contract as the previous one, just because year after year, the smallest percentage goes to the lowest paid employees. And that is something unconscionable on the part of the legislature. So that's part of the call to action beyond just the increase in the SEG that gives us more flexibility. The actual designated percentage amount needs to be increased for employees that are at the lowest end of our salary schedules. So I'm not as thrilled with this contract as I was with the teachers. I think the teachers' contract was able to address some real long-term issues. And I think given the limited resources, a noble effort has been done to do the same with this one. But that's something that's part of the call to action. And I am going to make just a couple of editorial comments on this. One is that, public employees in the state have always their open shop, quote unquote, in old union terms, their open shop. There's absolutely no way to compel employees to join a union except for their desire to do so and their understanding of what the benefit of being a member of a union is. But whatever gets negotiated covers every employee within that bargaining unit. And every person within that bargaining unit also has the ability to vote the contract up or down in the ratification vote. So I think that's significant. And this is directed at the Journal. Yesterday, there was an unfortunate cartoon on the editorial page that, along with challenges and the destructive forces focused at education, along with gun violence and mental health issues, it listed unions. And I think that this discussion tonight and the contracts brought before us really counter that narrative that somehow unions are responsible for negativity within education. I think this is really clear that unions facilitate the voice and the well-being of employees, and really is a joint effort together with management to find the ways to solve problems, to make sure that we have people who should be working with children and compensated adequately. So with that, I'll move for approval.
And before the approval, just for clarification, before you do your call to arms, I just want to make sure you have the right information, call for action. I just want to make sure you have the right information that a few years ago during one of the budget cuts that we did, we moved all operational money away from transportation and food services. So we don't use any operational funds for transportation in what you see in the salary. So if you're advocating for money for the SCG, right now we don't use operational money for transportation. We moved it all. I'm not used to having that. We used it all to the transportation funds without using operational dollars. But if we were able to use operational dollars for both food services and transportation, we would be able to increase the pay for the employees. But we have little leverage with what we're able to do by only using reimbursement for transportation.
Yeah, that was an issue at the last.
Mhm.
Yeah, we talked about that at the last.
Why we needed it to be held harmless, because we're funded on ridership. So if we don't have drivers, then we don't get ridership. And so it all trickles to each other.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other
Yeah.
discussion? Thank you very much. Ms. Chavez, I just want to say thank you too for joining us tonight. Appreciate your presence and always advocating for our employees. My mom retired from APS as an educational assistant and was always really proud of the work that she did for 25 plus years with APS. So with that,
Thank her for her service, because it's not an easy job.
no, she enjoyed it for sure. She had a great time.
We
being
all did. We all loved our job as EAs.
Absolutely. So Ms. Yeager, may we have a roll call, please?
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero, Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Peggy Mueller Aragon,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. So our next item is item C, consideration for approval of salary band adjustments pertaining to the APS, employee APS share of benefit premiums for the 2022-2023 contract year. This is also discussion action, and we have the same folks joining us, except we also have Valerie Atencio.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Thank you again for your time. And as I mentioned in my intro, we're here with Valerie Atencio. And to kind of piggyback on Board Member Peterson's comment, this item is before you to mitigate the impacts of the raises and mandated raises that have had on our salary bands, and to assist those employees in the lower compensated tiers. And so with that, thank you for sharing your screen, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Atencio.
My apologies there. I have to find the mute button. We've been doing this so long and I still can't find the unmute button. So President Montoya Cordova, members of the board, and Dr. Blakey, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. As you have in front of you, and as I'm sharing as well, the recommendation for revising the salary contribution bands for that determines the portion of benefits premiums that our employees pay. And so with the significant raises that have been mandated by the legislature, maintaining our current salary bands would result in many employees moving to a higher salary band that would result in those employees paying an increased percentage share of their benefits premiums. And so just going along with the conversation that has already been in play this evening, that would impact our lowest paid employees the most. And so as you can see here, our recommendation is to adjust the salary bands to keep the vast majority of employees within the same salary band for contributions to continue paying the same percentage share of their benefits premiums. And so I've laid it out there what the current structure looks like, what our proposal is, and this is for fiscal year 2023. And what that will do is it will keep some of those employees who are right on the cusp right now of the 20% band from moving into the 30% band. And then also those right on the edge of that 30% band from moving into the 40% band. And so
That'll keep them from falling off that cliff, and also maintain to the greatest extent possible the raises that we're providing them.
correct. So thank you, and we stand for questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Ms. Board Member Mueller-Aragon.
So can you tell me the number of employees that are affected by band movement that would, if it was left how it was in tier 1 to tier 2, if it wasn't, how many employees would have to move from tier 1 to tier 2 and tier 2 to tier 3? And how much of their raise would they not see?
Thank you, Board Member Mueller-Aragon. I appreciate those questions. And so I'm sharing my screen. I've put together what it looks like right now. So right now we have at the 20% tier 1, 1,889 employees, tier 2, which is 30%, 792 employees, and tier 3 at the 40% is 4,578 employees. If we made no change and just implemented the raises, the tier 1 would be 1,828 employees. And so that's about a 60 employee difference that would move from tier 1 into tier 2. Tier 2 at 30% would be 109 employees. And then into tier 3 would be 5,322 employees. So what would happen here is tier 2 currently is almost all of our level 1 teachers are in tier 2. And it would move all of our level 1 teachers into tier 3 if we made no change to the salary bands. So if we make the change that's proposed, then we would have 1,902 employees, and these are estimates based off of a point in time, as far as where people were with their salaries and the employees that we had on the books. But we would have 13 employees based off of this information that would move from tier 2 down to tier 1, which is not a bad thing. And then tier 2 would retain all the level 1 teachers and add about 170 members from tier 3. And so that would be at about 950 employees. And then tier 3 would be at 4,403 employees for those employees over 55,000. So let me just, to answer the other question that you asked, I put together a calculation. And this is an employee that currently is in tier 1, the 20% contribution. And their pay right now is $36,916. With the raise would be $39,545. And so our current band is $39,500. And so that's the cutoff point. They would just barely fall over that edge. And so their raise is $2,628. Moving to 30% contribution band would be an increase in their benefits premiums amount of $2,039, which would take up 77% of their raise. That they would be left with this $588.65 for the annual. And so you divide that out among 24 paychecks, it's $25, and taxes, ERB contribution, retiree health plan, they won't see anything as far as take home if we don't make a change in the contribution bands.
And on that other slide, Valerie, it does show that it's pretty close to where we are currently in terms of the shift. And one of the things that I do wish to provide clarification on is that we have an independent actuary, and we do these presentations annually. We have one coming up for the benefit presentation. This is part of their actuarial calculation. And so it's all included in that actuarial calculation for our benefits.
Okay, so can you tell me, Todd, what is going to be the total cost then to do this? Like, what's going to be the cost to the taxpayers who obviously have to pay for this?
So Valerie, do we have that here for this presentation? If not, we can certainly get that based on these estimates.
I apologize, I do not. So when we were working on this with our actuary, because negotiations weren't in play, hadn't been done, we didn't know exactly how that was going to play out. We didn't have a number to hone in on. We know that it's about 185-ish. It's less than 200 employees that would drop down a contribution band. And the presentation that you'll see in July, the impact on the APS contribution piece is minimal.
Right.
I don't remember the exact number that they were estimating out. I can get that number for you, but it's a pretty small number.
It is, and that's what I recall too, as it being a pretty negligible number, certainly with the impact of our overall benefit spend and benefit budget. The other thing too is we've intentionally carved this piece out because we bring the benefits presentation to you all coming up at a meeting here pretty quick, but that's for the calendar year changes. We're operating in the fiscal year for this piece. And we want to make sure our folks aren't dropping off this band or tier band cliff as illustrated on this slide, starting for this next pay period. So that's why we have this item such immediacy and are bringing it forward to you tonight at a special board meeting.
I mean, it would just be good to know, because what I might consider minimal, somebody else might not consider it minimal.
No, absolutely understood. Absolutely.
I mean, and I'm just thinking is we have taxpayers we have to answer to and everybody's suffering. And so
Right.
to have asked more of them when they're already suffering to cover this, increase benefit share is just a difficult one, I think, for a lot of people to, to swallow. And so we just have to think about everybody else out there. They all don't work for, APS or work for government. So it's something to think about. And I would really appreciate to know what that minimal number is. Thank you.
You bet. And I really appreciate the comments there. And that's really the whole premise for bringing this, talking about a few bearing the brunt. If we don't make a change, our employees who need this raise and the raise is most impactful for them will not see it. And then they will be bearing the brunt of, increasing contribution to the APS, the plan for paying claims out of. And, we'd have to look at how to adjust that differently for the calendar year when we make benefits changes, but it wouldn't be equitable and wouldn't be equitable for those folks who need these raises the most.
Well, private employees do this like all the time with no help. So.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just want to add, thank you for thinking ahead on that, because I think it's really important, especially for our employees that whose take-home pays are the lowest for sure, and also help to drive our economy, because when they have more money in their pocket too, they're also going to be spending it out in the community and helping our economic growth and the economy in the state. It also helps to make us an attractive employer, which I know we also have a responsibility to doing, is to making sure that we can continue to be a quality place of employment where we're not competing with other employers around, especially around our lowest paid wages, where what you're seeing now is that it's not unusual for folks that are at this lowest pay band to say, well, I could make 17 over here, I'm making 15 here, but sometimes those benefit packages and the way that we put that whole compensation together can also be another reason why people will stay. So I really appreciate this, because I know that a lot of the folks that depend on this also are students who are working towards degrees and becoming educators and wanting to work in this field. And this is an opportunity for them to have a real live work-based learning opportunity that also gives them a paid experience. So thank you so much. So did I have a motion on this? May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Josefina.
And I'll second. This is Barbara.
Brenda, may we have a roll call, please?
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero, Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Peggy Mueller Aragon,
No.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
and Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. So announcement of upcoming board meetings. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022 at 5 p.m. in the John Milne Community Boardroom of the Alice and Bruce King Educational Complex, 6400 Uptown Boulevard Northeast, or virtually at www.aps.edu. And the next special Board of Education meeting will be held on Wednesday, July 27th, 2022 at 5:15 p.m. or immediately following the Finance Committee meeting, also here in the John Milne Community Boardroom, and also live at www.aps.edu. And with that, we are adjourned. Usually him. Look at that.